good day, everybody. Welcome back to Pirkei Avos, the Ethics of the Fathers, live from Israel with Rabbi Chaim Coffman, who's got me laughing on the backside here. He just wants to do the intro. I don't know, but hey, then what am I doing here? I keep asking myself, but it's always a joy to hear the light of Torah coming out of the nation of Israel. And like I've said to everybody, Noah, you can't go wrong with ethics. And this is a great source. So let's just jump right in and see how the rabbi's doing. Rabbi Coffman, we see you're still laughing away. Always good to be with you and hear the beauty of the ethics of the fathers, for sure.
It's always a pleasure to be here. One day I'm going to sit in your seat. You're going to sit in my seat. We'll do the opposite. Have a lot of fun. As the Gonat Tzaddik Marenu v'Rabbeinu Arav Ragrocha Marx once said, I'd never be part of a country club, have me as a member. So people always say, come on, you always say that. You must be kidding. So as my rabbi once said, how do I know your wife is a tzaddik? How do I know she's really righteous? How do I know? Because she's married to you. So people say, come on, he was just kidding. I was like, no, he really knows. He knows exactly who I am, where I've been, and he still deals with me. Pretty big miracle. Anyway, we're going to rehash this Mishna because that's what I was told to do. The Mishna, chapter 2, Mishna 8. See, imagine if I had caffeine or I had actually something to drink a little bit hard. You guys all be dead by now. Says the Mishna, second chapter, Mishna 8, part 4. I guarantee it's going to be a part 5, a part 6, and a part 7. Right? He used to say, the more flesh, the more worms. That we spoke about. The more possessions. Oh, we're going to speak about that. That's where exactly... we were holding. The more possessions, the more worry. I'm not going to go through the rest of the Mishnah because really a moot point over there. We're definitely not going to make it to the more wives, the more witchcraft. I mean, we might. I mean, in theory, we might get there. But let's see. So we're speaking about the more possessions, the more worry. Right. So simple explanation, which we mentioned over the past 2 weeks, is the fact that the more a person has, right, the more possessions, the more property, all these different things that they have. So the more they want, right, 100% the more they want. And it's contagious because we also know that if a person has 100, they want 200. If they have 200, they want 400, right? It's just that's the way desire works, when it comes to, business. Et cetera. Thank God I never went into business because it's contagious, right? I know somebody, sat and learned for many years, but, he had a chain of hotels. He just couldn't get business out of his system. It was just, the person was, mega wealthy, et cetera, but it's still like, it's in their bones. And now this wasn't the type of person to say, I'm going to squash the competition. I'm interested in being number one. I'm going to be like Bill Gates. Right, work 16 hours a day. I want to be head honcho. I want to be number one over here. Could care less. Obviously, he's making good money.
Oh, Rabbi, no I saw it when in my nearly 25 years in the auto industry. I saw it where guys would get infected, and they were so used to closing a deal, getting all the money off the table every time, all the time, that you couldn't socialize with them because you couldn't go out for dinner without them trying to get the better of you over the dinner. The interactions became callous, very callous.
So the Gemara says there are 3 ways to test a person. Koso, kaso, kiso. Koso, how you drink. What comes out of your mouth when you drink? Are they words of Torah or garbage? Right? Kaso, how a person gets angry. And kiso, how a person's affected by their pockets, by money. Now, there's one thing I remember in my social studies class in 9th grade many moons ago. I learned that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So when a person has money, right, they have a certain level of power. People suck up to them, et cetera. They want favors from them, who knows what. But they're like, world-class, quote-unquote people because they have money. And with money comes all the benefits. Right? All the fringe benefits over here. Power, all these things. But when someone has that level, is at that level, imagine what happens when they lose it.
Oh,
Imagine what happens, they have a downturn. And they have a downturn, they don't know, they don't know what to do. So now they have
like
all this
the
power.
Great
And
Depression,
now,
1929.
Great Depression, suicide, a lot of things, right? Suicide was way up, during COVID, because you had many people forget about how much money they had. They couldn't provide for their families. Everything was shut down, right? So that took a lot of wind out of their sails, even if they were just getting by or whatever. We're not talking about mega money here, but people felt, I can't do this, I can't do that, I'm strapped, etc. Definitely understand how that can be. At the same time, imagine someone who gets knocked down a few pegs. They go from billions to millions, or they go from millions to thousands. That can certainly bring on depression. But we saw before when we spoke, quite in depth about the fact that the more I have does not mean the happier I am.
That's right.
Right? The Declaration of Independence we quoted, the right to life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, or the right to property. Right? So that would seem to say, okay, I can do what I want. We have, free choice, free will, etc. Now we would think maybe that if a person has a lot of money, they can do a lot of good things with it, or God forbid, bad things. Right? But essentially, you might think that if I had more money, a lot more money, look at all the good that they could do. Now the question is, you have to know how to use the money. But what's the greatest fear? What's the greatest fear of having money?
Loss.
The greatest fear is that the value is going to go down, or that they're going to lose it somehow. Right? What does the Mishna here say? We're going to be very specific. The more possessions, the more worry. So the more one has, the more they're going to worry where it's holding. What's going to happen to it? You put in money in the stock market. Good luck. A person puts, their money in the stock market. You have to have nerves to steal. Stock market goes up, it goes down. You have to think over here. What you're going to do, but a person's going to be a nervous wreck. Because anytime the markets, go south, in a big way, and that's where the majority of your money is, you're going to be sweating gumdrops. Because you're going to say, okay, what's going to be. Now, if you're not in it for the long run, you're going to be sweating on a daily basis. So the question is, okay, the more I have, you're right, so you can sit there and count it. It's worth this, it's worth that, it's worth the other thing. Very good. People want to be, on top of it, see what their value is, what their net worth is, and all that. But they're also worried what's going to be tomorrow. Is it going to stay the same? Is it going to go up? Is it, God forbid, going to go down? Right? The shekel here, very strong, certainly against the dollar. Dollar keeps dropping, right? It was pretty much constant, right? But now, now it's dipped a little bit. So anyone who gets paid in dollars, goes down, it goes up, etc. So you might lose, some on the transaction as well. Regardless, it's part of the game, right? It's all part of life. But if a person has a lot, they have a lot more at stake to lose.
Oh, for sure.
You have a lot more at stake. So, number of
very
times,
clear.
A number of times over the years, the stock market, crash went down 300 points, 400 points, whatever it was, people going out of their minds. I was whistling Dixie. I don't have any money in the stock market. So, all right, I can relate, to a certain extent, et cetera, but you got to weather the big storms, the small storms. So, there's a challenge of not having also. There's both sides of the coin. I've seen both sides of the coin. It's a challenge in both ways, because if you have it, you have to know how to use it. You have to know that people in need, you have to give charity. And even if people drive you bananas, knock on your door, 10 people at a time knocking on your door because you help a lot of people. Okay, but that's your obligation. Your obligation is to be out there to help people. Now, you need to have certain hours. You want to learn. You don't want to be accosted in the street, et cetera. It's also a challenge. People would say, yeah, I wish I had that challenge.
Extra management.
Also, right, but, people would say, well, I'd love to have that challenge. It's not such a simple challenge. People would say my life would be so much easier if I won the lottery. Statistics show anyone who's ever won the lottery in a big way, their lives were destroyed. Totally destroyed. And they end up almost penniless. The vast majority. So here, what are we saying? We're saying that, the more a person has, first of all, they're worried. They're worried. What's going to happen tomorrow? What's going to happen today? We know, as King Solomon says, you don't know what's going to happen today. You certainly don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, right? We saw that, way back when, we spoke about the idea that, I'll learn tomorrow. I'll learn the next day. Well, you don't know what's going to be. You have no idea what's going to be today. How are you going to know what's going to be tomorrow? Right? That's why the Mishnah says one day we'll get there and, probably when I'm like 95, whatever, the Mishnah says that repent, the day before you die. Now, obviously, there's a question. Nobody knows when they're going to die. Nobody has any idea when they're going to die. So you have to repent today, right? Before you go to sleep, you repent. Why? You don't know what's going to be tomorrow. A person, God forbid, may never wake up. You don't know, right? Then you want to have at least on your lips before you go to sleep, repentance, right? Certainly. But here, we're worried what is going to happen with the money. Where is it going to go? How much is going to be left? What happens if it goes down a lot? A person, you can have property management. You can have, property in a lot of different places. But still, you're going to be worried. Are they on top of it? Am I getting ripped off?
Diversified.
Diversification is certainly good, right? That there's no question. But even so, you can't just let it run on autopilot. You got to be there checking things out to make sure. They're like, yeah, we're getting the rent, we're getting this, don't worry. And really, you're not getting as much as you could, right? They're skimming off the top, let's say. So that's why, obviously, you'd have to go with a management company that, has a good reputation. Or, let's say better, has a stellar, reputation. Now, obviously, people don't want to have a bad reputation. But on the other hand, you have to be careful. It is interesting that when it comes to money and when it comes to investing, a person's going to check the person out once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, 10 times, before they're going to part with any money. That's why it's funny. My Rebbe said a number of times that, says Rav Agon Moshe Sturmach Shlita should be well, that he said a number of times, why aren't we that careful with ruchnias, with spirituality? People say, well, as long as it has a kosher symbol, that's okay. Really? One thing I don't understand, when I lived in a certain community, people were very stringent on a number of hechsherim, of rabbinic supervision, right? For kashrus on certain things, right? There was certain rabbinic supervision they would eat, and about everything else they wouldn't. Why not? Because they wanted to hold to a higher standard, A, and B, not every rabbinic supervision is the same. Some are better, some are not, whatever the case is. But, I've seen over the years, in the younger generation, that there are people that just, they're not scrupulous when it comes to kashrus. They're not, if they were investing money, right, they're gonna invest money.
Yeah.
They're going to be careful like no tomorrow. So why would you rely on a less standard? Rostovach has a ma'isa. He told the story when he was in France by Rav Mordechai Pogromansky, a blessed memory. The tells the Eloi. He learned and tells tremendous rabbinic scholar. And Rostovach told him that he saw seemingly an ultra-Orthodox Jew, and he was selling certain things for Shabbos. So he asked him, so Rav Pogromansky, so he thought to buy challah from him, buy fish from him, whatever it was. So Rav Pogromansky asked him, he said, if you had a certain amount of money, right, would you give it to that man to watch? And he said, well, I'm not really sure. I don't know him that well. I'm not really sure. So Rav Pogromansky asked him, or told him, if you're not really sure, how can you trust his kashrus? How can you trust, what he says? And how stringent he is? Just because he looks a certain way doesn't mean the kashrus is on the up and up. I'll give an example. There's a famous joke. A guy walks into a store, walks into a restaurant, right? And he says, you know, how do I know the kashrus is good here? Can I eat here? The guy behind the counter says, look, there's a picture of the Chofetz Chaim. There's a picture of the Chofetz Chaim on the wall. The guy turns around and says, if the Chofetz Chaim was standing here right now and he had a picture of you on the wall, I would eat here. He says, the Chofetz Chaim was standing here, I'd eat here because I would trust him. And if he had your picture on the wall, fine. But how do I know I can trust you just because you have a picture of the Chofetz Chaim on the wall? Right? When it comes to these type of things, we're very lenient. Right? In certain ways. When it comes to educating our kids. For instance, also another good example. Send our kids to school, and they're in school for many, many hours. And, we think we're exempt, or parents may think they're exempt from educating their kids, to a certain extent, because they're going to get everything in school. The Rebbe's going to teach them, whatever, whatever the case is. But where's the essence of education come from? The house. So, yeah, we have to pray every day, that our kids should do well. They should have good friends. Someone asked my Rebbe the following question: do I send to a school where they learn, they learn a lot, but the kids come from, let's say, problematic families? They're not all, keeping what they need to keep. Or do you send them to a school that they learn less, but all the families are good? And he answered, you send them to a school where they learn less, but the families are impeccable. That's where you send. Now, is that a guarantee that my kids are going to turn out all right? No. That's not a guarantee. We have to be careful who their friends are, right? Today, today's a hard, it's, educating kids, very hard. Every generation has their hardships, right? Today is no different. Back in the 1900s, why were Jewish kids, ultra-Orthodox kids, why were they going off? Why they were going off? Socialism, communism, that what they call the Haskalah, the Enlightenment, so to speak, took a lot of kids, right? Took a lot of kids from the best families. Not to mention war and all the other things as well, what they were going through. So each generation has their different thing. Today, that's not the case. We worried about communism? No. Right? Worried about socialism? Well, should be worried about socialism. Worried about democracy. Democracy's gone crazy. Gone absolutely crazy.
Yep, two wolves and a sheep deciding what to have for dinner.
Right, but what they're being taught, I mean, today is insane. Like when I was growing up, back in the day, what was the worst thing someone in my class could have done? Right? Either they had a rat tail, like a cuckoo, or they got an earring, like a guy got an earring. I remember someone in my class got an earring. Well, a very, intelligent guy. There are a lot of people doing drugs also, whatever. But if someone got a tattoo back in the day, who were getting tattoos? Right? Motorcycle people,
sailors
white
and
trash.
Bikers, yeah.
Sailors, bikers, and basically what we would call white trash. That's what we call them. Right? They're going to say, oh, how can you say? That's what we called them back in the day. You want to say it's racist? Call it whatever you want. Right? But that's lower class people, that's what they got. That's what they did. Today, anybody can get it. Even kids get them. Fine, so forget about, permissibility, not permissibility. Back in the day, that was the worst thing. Today it's crazy, what goes on. And we've spoken about this, transgender bathrooms, and what are the books that are taken out from the library? Johnny has 2 fathers, Sarah has 3 mothers. Like, this stuff is insane. Like, how do you know it's a 5-year-old? How do you know we're going to keep this clean? Because I don't want you to get thrown off the Roku network or from, there's no hide group over here. But the idea is, how can you take a 5-year-old, 6-year-old and say, how do you know you're not attracted to the same sex? How do you know? Why in the world would you plant something in a kid's mind where they wouldn't have thought about it otherwise? No matter what they see, whatever. But you are implanting in their minds, these terrible things. So when I was growing up, back in the day, right? So when I was growing up, so fine, there were things a little more wholesome, right? I'll say a little bit more, right? But then things went haywire. Things went haywire in the 70s, in the 80s, right? Forget about the 90s and, and beyond. What was passé, what you could do, what you couldn't do. in certain things, and, how far the media took things, especially when it came to movies, and that type of thing. It's horrific. But the bottom line, as we mentioned many times, the soul, what it sees, it stays with it. What it hears, it stays with it, right? And we mentioned, I could start singing certain jingles from commercials and people will finish it like that. Why? Because that's what they remember. Because that's part of them. Doesn't matter if you haven't thought about it for 20 years. Doesn't matter if you haven't thought about it for 30 years, but it's still there. If I asked you, what did Rashi say on last week's Parsha, say, didn't he play for the Raptors? Who was that? Wasn't he second baseman for the Blue Jays? Like, come on. That's reality, right? The reality is we know what we're here for. We know what we're alive for. And all this other stuff is just distraction, right? But how is it that in this generation, I always say, that in this generation, anyone who stays religious and continues to be religious with everything else thrown at them is a miracle. It's an absolute miracle. We have a phenomenon today. I don't know statistically, how great it is, but there is a phenomenon today that you have people have, let's say, a midlife crisis. And when they have a midlife crisis, what happens to them? They have a crisis in faith. In other words, they've been religious, let's say, their whole lives, right? We'll make it easy. They've been religious their whole lives. And now they just say, I want to chill. I want to take a step back, right? I want to take 5 steps back. And they opt out. So what happened over here? If they were born religious and they're going through the motions their whole life, it means they didn't internalize the message, right? It means, I'm not talking about where they went through an absolute trauma, right? If a person goes through an absolute trauma, right, who's the first person that gets blamed? God, right? In general, whether they're strong believers, they're weak believers, they're going to say, why is God doing this to me? No atheist in a foxhole, right? No atheist in a foxhole. Someone could say, they're not feeling well, they're not doing well, you should pray for me, right? And I'm going to use this. I'm going to see where it goes, and then I'll report on it in one of these shows. I'm going to say, why do you care? You want me to pray. You don't really believe in God, right? Remember the quote I said when someone interviewed me when I was 20 years old, going to rabbinical school. And the greatest quote that they quoted me saying was, people say they believe in God. I think that's a bunch of garbage, right? That was pretty much the quote, because people can say they believe in God. So what does that mean? There are a lot of Christians say, I believe in God, I believe in JC. No, that means zero. Why does it mean zero? Because that means I can do whatever I want. There's no responsibility for my action. None. I can go to the priest. I can confess. Everything's good. Say a few Hail Marys. We're good. That's it. I don't have to do anything. It's called pass the buck, right? So somebody who really, what are they going to answer me? What would somebody answer me? Now I'm going to play this conversation. They're going to say, not feeling so well. This one's not feeling so well. You should pray for them. And my answer is going to be, why would you want me to pray for them? You don't believe in the God I believe in. I don't even know if you believe in God at all. Well, we don't believe in the same God. So why do you want me to pray for them? Because there's no atheist in a foxhole, right? That means that when you're in a corner and you don't know where money's going to come from, let's say you got a bill to pay in 2 days, and you have no idea where this money's going to come from, how are you going to get help? You are praying like no tomorrow, even if you don't believe in God. Why? Because you have no one else to turn to. And that's one of the lessons we've learned. We mentioned a number of times as well by the Holocaust, right? What did the Holocaust teach us? Don't believe in man. Do not believe in man, right? People ask the question because it makes rabbis fidget. Where was God during the Holocaust? And what's the answer? God's where he always was and where he always is. I don't understand the question. They said, no, why did God kill 6 million people? Well, it takes a lot of people to kill 6 million people. There were the Latvians, the Croatians, the Germans, you had the Russians, you had the Poles, you had a lot of people killing a lot of people. That's not the question, where was God? The question is, where was man? Right? That's the question, without even going into all the details of that. That's the question. So where was man? The most brutal century in the history of mankind, the 20th century. Most brutal, murderous century. right? Hundreds, thousands, millions killed, butchered, sent to Siberia. You fill in the blanks over here. So people are gonna, throw out and say, okay, why did God do this? Or why did this happen? Right? But you don't believe in God. Essentially, you don't believe in God. So what are they going to answer to me? Me being obnoxious, what are they going to say to me? You know what they're going to say? They're going to say, well, first they're going to say, why do you have to be so defiant? Why do you have to be so obnoxious? That'll be the first thing, right? Like, why can't you just do what I asked you to do? Why do you have to make it like it's a whole thing about religion? Because it is. Because that's what life is. It's all about, does God exist or he doesn't exist? And I'm going to go on record because we're doing this live, Facebook, YouTube, not on the Roku network, but we're doing this live. So I'm going to go on record and say, what's the single most important question that we have to deal with, that every human being has to deal with? Simple thing is, did God create the world or not? Did he speak? Really, the question is, did God speak at Mount Sinai? That's really the most important thing. Did God give the Torah to the Jewish people at Mount Sinai or not? Right? If he gave the Torah at Mount Sinai, what does that mean for me? What does that mean for me as a Jew? What does that mean for me as a non-Jew? Now it depends. Someone will say, it depends what line you were in at Mount Sinai. If you were in the Reform line, you didn't get so many mitzvahs. If you were in the conservative line, you got more mitzvahs. If you were in the Orthodox line, you got everything. But there's only one problem. The Torah doesn't tell me that. The Torah tells me God spoke to the entire nation, which no other religion, quote unquote, says. God spoke to 600,000 men between the ages of 20 and 60.
Magnanimous claim, for sure.
Not including women and children. That's about 3 million people. Christians don't make the claim. Muslims don't make a claim. All their miracles happen in front of a bunch of drunks. Right? In front of a few people that cannot be corroborated. This, no one ever makes the claim. Now, the Muslims agree. The Christians agree. God gave the Torah to the Jewish people. If God gave the Torah to the Jewish people, they could say, okay, we're not chosen anymore. They manipulate the verses, blah, all this stuff doesn't matter, right? But most of the known world today will agree God gave the Torah to the Jewish people. Very good. Now, Coffman's second question is, so what does that mean? What does that mean for Jews? We'll make it very easy. They have to keep whatever commandments God said. They have to keep whatever the rabbis tell us to do. I know they're going to be trolls, and they're going to say, the rabbis this, the rabbis that. We don't care. There's a mitzvah in the Torah to keep what the Kohanim say, right? The Kohanim are the rabbis of every generation. They have an opportunity, right, in order to do that. They have the right to do that because God says to Moshe, tell the Jewish people. Can't go against Moshe Rabbeinu. That's the problem with Jeremiah chapter 30. The new covenant. You cannot change what the Torah says. Can't add, can't subtract. How do I know? Because God said, listen to Moshe, whatever he says. He said it in front of everybody, 3 million people. You don't get better than that, right? But Moshe says you can't add or subtract, right? So now, what are the trolls going to say? They're going to say that's what oral law is. It's all about adding and subtracting. Okay, so now you have to watch my videos on oral law that we did on Tanakh Talk, a number of videos and what that means. But that's the first question. First question is, God gave the Torah to the Jewish people. If God gave the Torah to the Jewish people, what does that mean? Is it really the same Torah? Did it change over time? Right? But essentially, we have to ask the question, if he gave the Torah, we're going to go on the assumption that the majority of the world agrees God gave the Torah to the Jewish people. So fine, if I'm Jewish, what's my obligation? First question. Second question is, okay, now I'm a non-Jew, right? We'll take the non-Jewish perspective. They don't want to convert. They don't have to convert. You can still eat shrimp. Probably watch your CFL. I won't crucify you, right? You can still watch it, whatever. So you won't get zapped. Even if I was playing God, maybe I'll have mercy. Anyway, so by a non-Jew, so they have to believe as the Rambam says. And we made clear in my Noahide class, which we're going to continue this week. And
Beautiful.
That is...
Excellent class.
And that is that a non-Jew has to keep the Noahide laws, believing God spoke to Moshe, Moshe passed it down. Right? That's pretty crucial. Now, so a non-Jew has to keep whatever makes logical sense, according to the Torah. We're going to go into detail exactly what that means. So a non-Jew has their own obligations. They're not the same as a Jew. And we're going to make that very clear. And I've already made that very clear. We're going to make it even clearer. You're not going to straddle both lines. Shabbos doesn't apply to a non-Jew. I don't care what you say. It doesn't apply to a non-Jew. Right? There are 3 signs that belong to the Jewish people that God says that makes you unique in the world. What are the 3 signs? Shabbos is one. Tefillin, phylacteries, that's the second one. What's the third one? Bris milah, circumcision. Those are the 3 applied to Jews. Don't never apply to non-Jews. Don't apply to non-Jews. Now, could be a non-Jew wants to take something out of Shabbos, incorporate it in their life. Okay, right? But they're not going to do what a Jew does. They're not even going to come close to what doing a Jew does. But we're not going to go there because I have to save something for my Noahites, right, when I give the class, right? But a non-Jew has to keep whatever the Torah tells them they have to keep. So now, the major question is if God gave the Torah to the Jewish people or not. If he gave the Torah, what's my obligation as a Jew? What's my obligation as a non-Jew? Now, if I was speaking to a Jew, right, if I was speaking to a Jew and he says, so how do I get into that? Because the person asked me, I want you to pray for so-and-so. Or I want you to pray for me. But you don't believe in prayer. You don't believe in God. You know, so let's say the person, no, I'm agnostic. So what does agnostic mean? Agnostic means I have a doubt. Agnostic means I'm not sure. Now, if there's an atheist, if someone's really an atheist, which really kind of foolish to be an atheist today, but okay, let's say somebody's an atheist. So somebody's an atheist, and they're going to come to you and say, my mother's dying, I want you to pray for her. Now, isn't that ironic? You're an atheist. You're Amalek. Amalek are atheists. They don't believe in anything that they can't see, right? They don't believe in anything in supernatural. That's clear, right? That's what the Torah says. If you don't believe in anything supernatural, what are you coming to me to pray for?
Right, 100%.
Right,
I get you, Rabbi.
That's extremely silly, right? I'm going for an operation, pray for me. Why? So that's going to be my answer. I'm very curious. I'm going to, to see what they're going to say back. Because I think what they're going to say is, I may not believe like you, but just in case you may be right, and you may have connections, you should pray for me. Now, how's that going to look upstairs? God's going to look down on this Meister. God's going to look down on this action. Going to say, what are you doing? What in the world are you doing? You're asking for someone, works on themselves on a regular basis, prays 3 times a day, learns, does all these other things, tries to do all these other mitzvahs. What are you asking? First of all, you're not holding there. Second of all, you don't care, because basically you're a scoffer. You are a lates, right? What we call in Hebrew, a lates, right? Which is what King Solomon says, don't hang out with people that scoff or mock because they'll make you a scoffer also. So I'll just, as a side point, I'll mention something my Rebbe brought down this week's Parsha that beginning of the Parsha, it says that about Yitzchak, let me just read it here, just so I don't misquote it. It says at the very beginning, I find it here. Yeah, chapter 25, verse 19. These are the offspring of Isaac, son of Abraham. Abraham had Isaac, and Abraham had Isaac, right? Or begat. Abraham begat Isaac. So what's the language here, right? Yitzchak's the son of Abraham. Abraham gave birth to Isaac. Okay, pretty obvious, right? Pretty obvious, right? So the commentaries say the late Sanei Hador, the mockers of the generation, said it really wasn't Abraham that got Sarah pregnant. Who got Sarah pregnant? It was Avimelech, right? It was the king that got her pregnant, because Abraham couldn't get her pregnant. So it must be that she got taken by Avimelech, and she must have got pregnant from him. Now, what's the problem with this? The problem is that that's what they're going to say. They're going to say, that's why God made Yitzhak look like Abraham. They had the same face, similar face, right? Very similar face. So if that's the case, so God's going to answer these scoffers, these mockers. He's going to answer why? Because they're going to say she got pregnant from Avimelech. So God made the face look the same as Abraham. Very good. There's only one problem. How old was Sarah when she gave birth? She was 90. God changed her nature. According to nature, she should never have had children, ever. Right? So God changed her nature. She got back her period, she got pregnant, etc. So why isn't that, who cares who she got pregnant by? In other words, if she got pregnant by Avimelech, if she got pregnant by the king, is that any less of a miracle? Why is that any less of a miracle than if she got pregnant by Abraham? Abraham didn't have the problem over here. It wasn't his issue. Because after Sarah dies, right, he marries Keturah. Who's Keturah? Hagar. She repents. How many kids did he have? 6, 7? She had a whole bunch of kids. Not the problem of Abraham. Abraham's pretty fertile, even at the age of 100, or more. So it's her problem, right? So the question remains. So who cares who got her pregnant? The fact is that if Avimelech would have got her pregnant, it's also a miracle. It's no less of a miracle, right? Now, what could the language over here have been? The language could have been, as my Rebbe says, why weren't they called Rishayei Ador? The evil ones of the generation. Why are they called Leitzanei Ador? Why are they called the scoffers? Because even if they would see a miracle with their own eyes, they're still going to try and figure out how it was done. They're going to be cynical. That's the generation we live in today, right? Even when I was growing up, way back when. Same type of generation, a very, very cynical generation, certainly about religion. No question about it, right? So here, I could have said the evil ones of the generation. No. We don't have to say the evil ones, right? The scoffers are the ones who are going to say, yeah, maybe it was a miracle, but then they're going to downgrade the miracle. They're absolutely going to downgrade the miracle, and make fun of it or this and that. But the miracle still stands, right? 100%, it still stands over here, right? So that's the generation we live in. So so why do I mention this? I mention this because that's what the person is going to answer back. We're living in a generation of scoffers. If we're living in a generation of scoffers, then if Coffman were to say, come on, you don't really believe in God. They're going to say, well, maybe I don't believe in the same God as you. And I don't believe I have to do all these crazy things that you do. Very good. But if I believe God spoke at Mount Sinai and it was passed down generation to generation, and you're not bringing proof against that, so why do you want me to pray to that God? I think it's a very simple answer, right? But what are these scoffers going to say? They're going to say, it doesn't matter, just pray. I just want you to pray. Right? It's a contradiction in terms. Total contradiction in terms.
Sure it is.
And they'll never admit it. And what they'll do is just constantly make fun of you. Like I told you the story about these 2 non-Jews that got married. Right? And someone says, see, I said, who married them? I think I mentioned this last week. And he said, well, they got married by somebody. They didn't even mention God at the wedding. Now, these are 2 non-Jews. Now, the person thinks maybe their kid is Jewish because it goes by patrilineal descent. But the kid's not Jewish. Fine. 2 non-Jews get married. 2 non-Jews get married. Do I need a document? No. Do I need justice of the peace? No. Can they live together? Common law marriage? Common law marriage. That's what Noahidism is, right? If they live together, that's marriage. If they walk out, if they separate, that's divorce. I don't need a document. I don't need anything, right? I don't need anything over here. So what I was going to explain to this, this ignoramus, this Jew, I'm going to explain to him what Noahide is and this. Forget it. It's a waste of time. So what was my answer? This person said, see, they didn't even mention God. Ha, ha, ha. My answer was, okay. So what? So what if they didn't mention God? Now, I knew what I was thinking, but I'm never going to mention that because it's not going to go anywhere. Right? That's called Leitzanei. Right? That is called mocking, scoffing, and that's a group that Rabbeinu Yonah says, the gate of repentance, 4 types of groups that will not see God's presence, in the next world. One of them is scoffers. And what they do is they just make fun of anything that's serious.
Right.
Right. And certainly when it comes to religion. So, if someone's gonna say, well, pray for me, this and that. So I want to hear what someone's response is. I'm going to use it at some point. I'm going to be very curious to see what they're going to say. Because I think I know what they're going to say, but I could totally be wrong. But in the end, there's no atheist in a foxhole. When the chips are down, they'll say, pray for me. But you don't believe in God. Right? So on the chance that you may be right, right? Even though I may not believe in the world to come. Okay, but you want to play Russian roulette. Take a gun, take a revolver, right? You got 6 bullets there, 8 bullets there, 1 in 6, 1 in 8 chance. 10% chance, give or take, 10, 15% chance, right? You going to take that gun and pull the trigger? No. No one is going to pull that trigger. Nobody.
Insane people wouldn't, no.
Unless they're on drugs or they're out of their mind. Nobody's going to pull that trigger. Now, let's say there's a 10% chance. I'll even say less. Even if it's a 5% chance that what the Torah says is true and the person's going to get punished in this world and the next world, etc. Who's going to be willing to take the chance? And what's the answer? People are going to say, God, what have you done for me lately? Show me that it's true. Oh, really? Let's look at the proofs. No, I'm not interested. I want God to speak to me. Right? Real Christian thing to say. I'm going to pray on this. I've had someone tell me this many times. I don't need to listen to you. I don't need to listen to the rabbis. I'm going to pray. Okay, go ahead. See if God speaks to you. No. You're a wacko. That's not how it works. Right? 100% that's not how it works. Right? But that's the generation we live in. We live in a generation of these mockers, of these scoffers. And they're not going to take one iota of something that you say seriously. They're not. They're not interested. Because you said before, what's the biggest question people are going to ask? Mustard or ketchup in my hot dog. That's where they're holding. They're not going to ask this question. And even if they would ask the question, they're going to, are they going to want to hear an answer? Like someone said, oh, life after death? Can you give me a 30-second soundbite? Yeah, let me explain all of science in 5 seconds. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. Come on, it's a joke. So my answer was, I'll send you a link. Did they watch it? I have no idea. Probably not. I said, I'll send you a link. You want to watch it? You watch it. Yeah, I'm going to give it, so they can DVR it. I'm going to give them a 30-second video. Come on. So I don't know how I got into all that. But the point is we're living in a tough generation. We're living in a generation people don't care. They'll say, God, show me, send me something, whatever. And that's the case. So here, back to our Mishna, get back to our Mishna here, that, we're worried, or the Mishna is worried over here, the more a person has, the more they are constantly worried how in the world they're going to keep it. How in the world they're going to hold on to it. Because no one wants to lose it. No, there are people that lost a lot, regained it. Whatever, I can guarantee you if they lost a lot, they were miserable. Because today, and even way back when, how are people judged? They're judged by what they do. Because the first question, you meet somebody new, hi, how are you? What do you do? As if we're defined. It's a good thing I didn't meet you back in the day and say, oh, I'm a used car salesman. Next. So it's kind of like, the joke, you hear these evangelicals on Sunday morning. So someone told me, said, yeah, if you turn off the volume, they look exactly like used car salesmen. Not you, but I'm saying, not you, but I'm saying in general, but that's how people
some of them are
defined.
Screamers. They just, they look like.
Exactly. Well, that's what they say about me also, but okay. But at the end of the day, that's how people are defined. People define others by what they do. They'll say, oh, you do this, so, how you're making money. Or, I'm glad your spouse makes money. Like, not in abject poverty. I've had better days, worse days, etc. But at the end of the day, that's called scoffing. That's called mocking over here. Right? And unfortunately, we define people by what they do. And that's totally wrong. Well, who cares what they do? What they do, as we mentioned a number of times, is only because they need to put bread on the table. That doesn't define them. People have more respect. If they have a PhD, pilot higher and deeper, they have a lot more respect for that, than other things. They have respect. Someone's doing research and science and, whatever. But, someone's learning ancient Jewish texts, and they're learning day and night and, giving proper, character traits to their kids and living a moral life and, and all this. Oh, that has no value. You're a sponge on society. Now, if I was writing a holy book of tax law, and I went to a university and they're paying me to live in their place. They're giving me a stipend every month. No one's going to say, oh, look at him. He's a schnorrer. He's taking money, right? He's doing something for the world. You know what he's doing? He's writing a holy book on tax law. I can't even tell you what that's done for the world. Can't even tell you. It would be me, let's say in the day, writing the book, The Curse of the Bambino. Say, wow, look what he's done. You know, they gave him a ton of money up front. You know, they gave him a place to live. They put him on an island to be able to think, to get all his research and all that. No one's going to call him a schnorrer. No one's saying he's taking charity money and he's doing this and he's doing that. He's writing a holy book about Babe Ruth. That's worth something. Come on. Why you say, Rabbi, come on, you're exaggerating. No, there was somebody actually writing a book on tax law, and that's how it came up. No one called this person a schnorrer. No one said, oh, he was taking charity. He's getting a stipend. No, he's writing a book on tax law. Why is tax law respected? What is writing a book on tax law done for the world? Seriously. You know, someone writes a book on Jewish philosophy. They're learning ancient text. Oh, that's nothing. Why? Because we don't believe in it. Well, I don't believe in tax law either. I don't believe it has any merit in and of itself, just to find loopholes for people.
Oh, there's so much distraction in this world, yes.
You know, so people look at what they think is real, which is not. Right? What's the single biggest watched event every number of years? Right? It's the World Cup. That's the single biggest watched event. But every year, what's the single biggest watched event? The Super Bowl. Right? You know, the championship game. That, because you have ads that are like, $500,000 for, or $1 million a minute because most people are watching the game, right? So that's one day a year. You got the pregame show. You got the whole thing. It's a whole day, right? Super Sunday. It's a whole day, right? So I'll make fun of that when we get closer. But in general, you think about it, one day, and it's all for football. That's what it is. And majority of people, they're having parties. They're getting together. Whether the game is good, the game is not, whatever, it's a whole day. So now imagine a person wasting a whole day. Most of their day planned around this. So you're going to say, but, it's the game of the year. Forget my team's in it, they're not in it, whatever. But it's a distraction. You're right. This whole world is a distraction. Good old Uncle Esav, we mentioned, was willing to forfeit his portion of the world to come, the firstborn, for a bowl of lentils. Now, the Chidah, our great rabbis many years ago, a few hundred years ago, said that Esav was 1,000 times greater mind capacity than Yaakov was. 1,000. Even if you tell me he was 10 or 50 times, what happened to him? 1,000 times greater? That's how bad desires are. Desires can destroy a person. His mind knew what the right thing to do was. That's why his head is buried in the cave of the patriarchs. His body not, because his body destroyed him. That's how far it goes. And he grew up in the house of Isaac. He saw miracles in his father's house. He saw angels. He wasn't a slouch by any stretch. When they were growing up, he couldn't tell the difference. Till they were bar mitzvah. Yaakov went his way, Esav went his way. But up until that time, they were exactly the same. Not to mention the fact that Esav was probably better. It was greater. In different ways. But what happened? He got distracted. So, previous generations, how did Orthodox Jews get distracted? All kinds of things. Communism, socialism. So today, right, it's all about democracy. It's all about doing what I want to do. It's all about handheld devices. That is what is ultimately destroying everybody, right? In other words, you wanted to do certain things, you have to almost go in hiding. You almost had to go certain places to do it. Now you have it in the palm of your hand, right? Absolutely destructive. And we've spoken about this. We've spoken a lot about this, but that is probably the single biggest, trial today, I think, that people have. Yeah, you'll tell me about intermarriage, tell me about assimilation. That's also, it's also very true, right? But what is destroying youth in general? Jews, non-Jews, right? Across the board. That's what it is, right? It's the internet. And I understand, why great rabbis come out and said, you should never have it. Doesn't matter, right? Doesn't matter. There's Torah on it, whatever, right? The majority of stuff there is bad. told people about TV and how bad watching TV is, and someone said, well, there's a History Channel, there's Doctor Who. I don't know if Doctor Who's still alive, right? There's Doctor Who. I can watch this, I can watch that. I said, okay, how many? Let's take a survey. How many people have ever watched the History Channel? Nobody. How many
I
people
watch it
Doctor
regularly.
Who? Okay, so you're an oxymoron. You also watch the CFL, so I don't know. I can't take what you say that seriously. But in general, how many people watching this stuff? Not too many. Older generation, maybe. Younger generation, for sure not. Right? Unless you're a total geek, you got nothing else to do. But nobody, no one's really watching this stuff. So every generation has their thing, right? Every generation has their evil inclination. So today we mentioned, that's how I get onto all this, because today, if every generation has their evil inclination, and we said that if a person stays religious even today, no matter how they grew up or not, it's a pretty big miracle, because there's a lot of temptation. There's a lot of temptation, people willing to forfeit whatever they've had, because of desire. And desire can absolutely destroy. We're going to see one day, I don't know when, but there are three things that can destroy a person: taiva, desire, kavod, honor, and jealousy. Right? Jealousy, who do we know? By Korach. Spoken about him many times. And what did Korach do? Korach came out against Moshe Rabbeinu and Aaron HaKohen. And he wanted to be the high priest. And he said, it's not fair. I saw who's coming out of me. I'm just as great, blah, 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 blah. But he wasn't a fool. He came out of Egypt. Part of the 20% came out of Egypt. Held the ark, didn't die. Saw God face to face on Mount Sinai. Knows Moshe Rabbeinu was not doing anything on his own. Jealousy killed him. Jealousy absolutely destroyed him. So one explanation, whenever we get there, will be, literally, jealousy has the power to kill. Literally can kill a person. But you're going to say someone at that level, so we could all get depressed. And we could all say someone at that level, way back when, gets destroyed. What's that going to say about us? You're going to say we don't have a fighting chance. Not true. We may be a weaker generation, or the tissue generation, or Teflon generation, as I would call it, right? But we may be a weak generation, so what? The Talmud says clear, God created the evil inclination, and he created the antidotes. What's the antidote? Torah. But how can a person overcome the evil inclination? The Talmud says you need heavenly help. If you don't have heavenly help, you're in trouble. You're 100% in trouble. And there's a lot of distraction. Tremendous a lot of distraction. And I'm not even going to go through the statistics. We've spoken about, when a person wastes time and they're not focused, however much time it is, you play it over a lifetime or 30, 40 years, a person can get very, very depressed. A person will see, 40 years, 50 years went by and they're like weeks out of the year that they totally wasted time. Weeks. I don't want to say months. I don't want to get that extreme. Weeks out of the year. Let's say you had 2 weeks out of the year. 24 hours a day. 7 days a week. Right? It's 108 hours. That's 216 hours a year. That is a pretty scary proposition.
Sure is.
216 hours. That's 2 full weeks. I don't think anyone wants to hear that. And then they understand what reality is. And it's too late. Because after 120 years, they will give me another chance. Look at all this time person wasted. We're not saying it's not fun. We're not saying it's not entertaining. Right? It's a distraction. The whole world is a distraction. So you're going to say, what? I have to stay in my cave? All I have to do is sit and learn? When I'm not working? If you're a Jew, that's your obligation. If you're a non-Jew, right, I would ask the question, how are you going to stay on the straight and narrow path? Because one thing leads to another, God's not, the evil inclination is not going to come to a Jew and say, okay, I want you to desecrate Shabbos right now. The Jew is going to say, go scram. I'm not going to, what do you think? I'm going to desecrate Shabbos? You think that's even on my radar? I'm going to desecrate Shabbos? So what does the evil inclination say? The evil inclination says, I got plenty of time. I got a lot of patience. So what does the evil inclination do? It wears you down. It wears you down. And the more it wears you down, the more susceptible you are. the more susceptible you are, then it's only a matter of time. Because, there is a phenomenon, certainly in the modern Orthodox world. Can't say for the ultra-Orthodox world how dominant it is, right, or predominant it is. In the modern Orthodox world, there are kids today that struggle with texting on Shabbos.
Wow.
Using a phone to text on Shabbos. There are other vices also, drugs, other things, whatever. But, texting on Shabbos, because it's just something they can't live without. They understand, okay, maybe the rabbinic prohibition, not a Torah prohibition, right? Whatever it is. However, they want to justify it. In some ways. They're addicted. They're 100% addicted. They can't live without this stupid thing. And they absolutely desperately need to text over a 27-hour period. Can't live with it. It's almost like, God forbid, someone who's a heroin addict. Someone who's a heroin addict, you take them off it, you have to give them drugs in order, the body goes out of whack. The body, the body is
the
crazy.
Dependency, yeah. Is
the dependency. Yeah. So we're talking about something here, we're going to make it easy. We're just talking about texting. Not talking about movies, not talking about, other things that are addictive. Yeah. There are a lot of things, but if a person really believes God runs the world, God's the one in charge, we say Kiddush Friday nights, we say Book of Genesis chapter 2, God stopped creating the world, blah, 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 and we stand up and give testimony, otherwise you don't do that, you're a heretic, right? You got the status of a non-Jew, you don't believe God created the world. That's why Shabbos is so crucial. So when a person texts on Shabbos, now you might think it's a relatively minor thing, but it goes against not only the law itself, it goes against the spirit of the law. For example, I'll give another example. That's even less serious. Let's say someone, had a DVR and they stick their DVR on. Or, even better, we got a DVR. They leave the TV on to one station, right? Game 7, NBA Finals, their team's in it, whatever. They don't want to miss the game Friday night. So they leave the TV on, they don't touch it. They make Kiddush, they have breads, they eat their meal. While they're eating the meal, they go and watch the game. Or, after the meal, they have a quick meal, whatever it is. Now, technically speaking, they haven't changed the dial. They haven't turned up and down the sound. They haven't done anything wrong, technically. Right? But they've transgressed the spirit of the law. Right? If they would, let's say, put their TV on a timer, even better. TV was off, they turned it on. One station, but they did it before Shabbos. Right? They have it on a timer, whatever. Technically speaking, they do anything wrong? No. But it's called being disgusting in God's eyes.
Right.
It would be the same thing. A person walked downtown or they walked nearby and they went window shopping. They're not buying anything. They walk by the store, they sit and stare. They don't walk in the store. And they certainly don't buy anything. Technically speaking, is there anything wrong? No. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong. But it's not in the spirit of Shabbos. There are people that will buy, let's say, tickets to an art museum. Or something like that. Forget about carrying. That's a different issue on Shabbos. Or a festival. But let's say they had tickets before. There's not a problem with carrying. Not a problem with traveling. They go. They bring the ticket. They go into the museum on Shabbos. Have they transgressed anything? If it's a regular door, not with electronic eye, not with any of these other things going to be forbidden. Technically speaking, they didn't do anything wrong. Right? It's the spirit of Shabbos. It goes against the entire thing that Shabbos stands for. Right? So texting is no different. You say, okay, it's rabbinical, it's this, but it goes against what God wants. He wants all these things to stop. Telephones, texting, computers.
Oh, wait till robots come out. The challenge, exactly. I'm sure.
Yeah. So there are a lot of things. There are a lot of things. Okay, God says, one day a week belongs to me. So now, what are these Jews saying? They're saying, okay, I'll give you one day on my terms. This is something I can't give up. God said, listen, there are things that are addictive. I understand. Now, there are many things that are addictive. But if you really internalize the message, then it's something you have an obligation to stop, right? You're going against the spirit of the law. If you're going against the spirit of the law, well, this is really against the law itself. But even so, we'll make it easier. You're going against the spirit of the law. Let's say you didn't do anything wrong. You go against the spirit of the law. That has an effect.
Oh, for
that
sure.
That weakens your resolve. The more it weakens your resolve, the evil inclination says it's only a matter of time. It's only a matter of time before I'm going to get you to desecrate even the worst things. So you're going to say, come on. It doesn't work like that. Of course, that is the way it works, right? I'll give an example. It might be a little bit of an extreme example. But I know somebody growing up, parents didn't have a TV, or maybe they had a TV in the closet or whatever, but they had a radio. They let their kids listen to radio, etc. Then one of their kids is a teenager. Now, what did he get into? What radio show did he get into? Howard Stern. That's what he first got into, right? And after that, it was downhill. It was downhill after that. Right now, teenagers are a creation of themselves. They want to test the waters, rebel, this, that. Want things that are forbidden. You know what they say? If it's not forbidden, no one's going to want to do it. If it is forbidden, everyone wants to do it, right? It's like, a person's married, and adultery. What do we say? We say, "Maim genuvim im taku." Stolen waters are always the sweetest, right? If they're not stolen, it's not as fun. If it's something forbidden, different issue, right? If it's something forbidden, everybody wants it. If it's something's not forbidden, okay, no big deal. I'll do it. I won't do it. Whatever. But in this case, it's a very severe thing, and the reason is, and again, it's not that hard to understand, that a person's resolve gets much weaker. Gets much, much weaker until the evil inclination says, okay, now I'm going to zap you. Now I'm going to get you to desecrate Shabbos. But you wouldn't have thought of desecrating Shabbos, etc. So maybe, the parent, I don't know, maybe the parents tried to do something, not, get this person not to listen to this stuff or whatever, but in the end, it's just a downward slope. I mean, I don't know how further you go down than Howard Stern, but it could be, worse things or whatever.
Well, it's very crude, very crude.
Yeah. So
crude
when you're talking about something like that, when a person hears that, forget about seeing it, right? At that time, it's just only heard. When a person hears that, and they hear nivul peh, they hear people curse, they hear people talk like truck drivers, right? Now,
There's
how
a
can
pollution,
a person,
right?
how can a person in their right minds, as an Orthodox Jew, think that's okay? Now, either they're absolutely out of their mind and they're not in reality, and they don't really know what Torah says, as an Orthodox Jew. Or, what are they going to say? Well, I don't curse. Or I don't curse as much. So what's the big deal? Or what they'll say a third thing. I see plenty of Orthodox Jews that curse. There are Orthodox Jews that curse. Okay, so what? That doesn't mean it's right. Now, the problem with that is that if a person sees a contradiction in terms, do as I say, not as I do. Now, for a child, that's problematic.
Very.
That's problematic. Because, let's say a child grows up in a family that, let's say one of the parents is more religious and the other parent isn't. Now, in most cases, they don't have the same values, then the child gets skewed values. Skewed values. I know somebody many years ago, he grew up unorthodox, he'd come home and, his father would be sitting his lazy boy reading the paper and say, oh, you got to learn. Well, what are you doing? You're sitting and wasting your time reading the paper. It's like the syndrome, do as I say, not as I do. And what happens in a situation like that, as a friend of mine told me, right? It's either you're going to go one way or the other. Either be an ultra-Orthodox Jew or you be nothing, right? Or you be very little. So a friend of mine grew up as in a non-Orthodox family. At the meal right before Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the year, they're watching football. He said no contradiction. There's Yom Kippur, there's football. Now, he became an ultra-Orthodox Jew, and his brother became almost nothing. Just about nothing. Right? So, it doesn't work otherwise. Now, people can say whatever they want, but you can't straddle both worlds. It doesn't work. Either you're gonna really do the right thing and go in the right direction, or you go in the wrong direction. And you continue going in the wrong direction until you're basically doing nothing. That's what's going to happen. You might have a revival, an epiphany, this, that, but, you might have, it's like starting a Jeep with a 9-volt or a Humvee. It's just not going to go, because the more garbage you steep on your soul, the harder it is to reignite. So people say, but I don't speak like that. I don't speak like a truck driver. I don't curse, but you do curse. You may not curse as much, right? But, do you curse on a regular basis? Maybe not on a regular basis. But most people, I think, would admit they curse to a certain extent. Now, they'll say, well, I don't do it a lot. I try and work on it. Well, okay. Right? It has an effect. And people who think it doesn't have an effect, they're wrong. It absolutely has an effect. And it's only a matter of time it can go way out of whack. A person has some traumatic experience, something happens, whatever it is, they lose it. And what's the first thing that happens? And when they lose it, they're not thinking straight. When they don't think straight, they're not in control. Even in terrible situations, they can do all kinds of things, say all kinds of things that are forbidden. Right? These things have an effect. What I see, we mentioned many times, and we're going to keep mentioning it. It has an effect on who you are, on what you see, by billboards, by, what you hear. And that's why sometimes a person may see, an ultra-Orthodox Jew walking in the street and their head is down. Why is their head down? Because they don't want to see anything. They don't want to see women not dressed properly. And they may go like this, they may not want to hear things, etc. Why? Because they don't want to let the evil inclination in. Now, again, some people hearing this for the first time, they'll say, we're not always in control. You're right. I've gotten this question a lot. Work in a certain place, people speak Lashon Hara, people use, people curse, this and that. What can I do? So a person always has to think, Torah thoughts, and just ignore everything else around them. It's not an easy thing to do. Definitely not an easy thing to do. But some people will say, someone said this to me once. They said, if you go to a beach, if you go to a mixed beach, we're going to, again, keep this clean for the viewers and the Roku network. If you go to the beach, meaning me, you go to the beach and you get excited, there's something wrong with you. I said, if I wouldn't, then there's something wrong with me. I said, what are you talking about? It's the single greatest urge God gave to every human. Right? Single greatest urge. So you can say, well, you have to work on suppressing it. You're right. I'm not saying not. If you put someone in that situation, and people walking around with barely any clothes on, what do you think? I'm not saying the person's going to react. Hopefully they won't react and whatever. But, if a person sees certain things, they're going to react unless they're dead. Unless they're totally dead over here. Right? How can it be a person is that dead? They walk in such a situation totally not affected. Right? Not affected. Totally not affected. You got to be superhuman. You have to be superhuman. So my answer was that if you're not affected, you need to see a psychologist. Right? Either you're gay, which could very well be, right? We're not even going to go down there. Right? Either that's the case or there's something wrong with you. Right? Totally something wrong with you. Because when a person gets married, it doesn't mean all of a sudden, oh, that's it. They don't, they're not interested in any other women, or the wife's not interested in any other men. Those things just go out, just go by the wayside. I don't think those feelings that die, you just may not act on it, hopefully, and stay happily married. But, if you're not careful, anything can happen. That's why a person at the workplace, other places, you have to be careful. Someone of the opposite sex, you only, you don't speak to them on a first name basis, if possible. You limit conversations. Right, you got to be a team player, this, that, but you got to nip it in the bud. And if you don't nip it in the bud, what happens? Things can happen. Yeah. Things can happen. Friendships can grow more. Right? A person can be in the best of marriages. Things can happen. right? We don't want to tempt fate over here, right? It's something we don't want to do. And we're affected by everything around us. So someone's going to ask, but if we're affected by everything around us, how am I supposed to fight it? It's unfair. God's putting me in an unfair position. So you're right. We're in this world to strive, as the Ramchal says, in Derech Hashem. That's what we're here for. We're here to struggle. We're here to gain our portion of the world to come. So God, God will say, you're right. I made a distracting world. You helped me. You helped me in a major way. So this is a very distracting world. True. But we already know there's an antidote. There's an antidote over here. I have to learn to control my thoughts. I have to learn to control what I see, what I hear. It's not always possible, right? We live in the greater world. It's not always possible, to do that, but at the end of the day, if we see certain things, even against our will, we have to work very hard to get our thoughts, away from that. Because if it happened, a person saw something shouldn't have seen, but they don't think about it, whatever, fine. You're not going to get punished for that. If a person then sits there and daydreams and this and that, that's a problem, right? Something comes in your path, it's not necessarily your problem. You didn't ask for it. But if you're sitting there thinking about it and staring and this and that, that's a problem, right? So we're thrown a lot of different things, even against our will. Even against our will, right? How many people, and it's probably everybody, right? I'm not going to take a survey. A person, is on the internet, they're surfing, all of a sudden, image pops up. They got a pop-up blocker. But somehow this got through the pop-up blocker, and some image comes up. You weren't on any forbidden sites. You weren't looking at things you weren't supposed to. And somehow this image shows up. You didn't ask for it. You weren't interested in it, but it shows up. It's right there. Right? So there are things we mentioned. The Mishna Pirkei Avos says, we'll get there one day. I don't know when. We'll get there one day. That says that you're born against your will, you die against you. I just answered, actually. Someone asked the question, why was I born as a non-Jew? Little thing on Chabad.org, whatever. Someone asked the question, why was I born as a non-Jew? So I answered. You're not in control of almost anything. You're not in control who your parents are. You're not in control who your siblings are. You're not in control of your socioeconomic situation. There's so many things you're not in control of. In the Mishna Pirkei Avos, I says you're born against your will, you die against your will. In parentheses, you still have to live. We don't have a choice. We're not given a choice.
And time flows in one direction.
Right. We're not given a choice at all. So if we're not given a choice at all, we have to make the best of whatever we're given. That being said, it's kind of a funny question. I get this a lot also. Why, if I want to go through this process, I have to convert, or whatever the case is, and I have to move, and this, why wasn't I given the opportunity at the beginning? Why was I born a Jew? Well, you were. The reality is your soul was on Mount Sinai.
Be thankful.
But then it got messed up. Then it got messed up through assimilation, into marriage. Exactly how, a Jewish soul becomes a non-Jewish soul. Whatever. It's Kabbalistic, whole thing in Kabbalah, which we won't get into. But the point is, you're right. It's not your fault. Your soul had to go through this for whatever reason. Right? But now you've come to the realization, so I would say just get over it. Move on. That's not you could sit there and be stuck with this question, for years. But why this happen? Why that? Forget about it. You're not going to understand anyway in 10 lifetimes. Unless God reveals it to you. Right? And I get this a lot. I want to know and understand the measure for measure. Forget it. 99 times out of 100, you'll never understand. You'll never understand the measure for measure.
Yeah.
And the reason is very simple.
That we can't even
the reason is very simple.
conceptualize.
Because when we go to sleep and we say, I forgive anyone who's done anything against me, blah, 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 and we take into account everything I've done during the day, which we should do, before our head hits the pillow. Now, think about how you interacted with others. Think about how you interacted with God. Think about how you prayed. Think about all kinds of things that we've done during the day. Is anyone out there, I would love to see, anybody out there think they're squeaky clean? I can't imagine, even, with the Gaiva Sheba Gaiva, the conceited amongst the most conceited. You want to tell me you didn't say something you shouldn't have to somebody? You didn't act in a proper way to something? You didn't answer whatever it was. that, they're probably, and I'm going to be generous, probably 20 to 30 things at least we've done wrong a day. At least. And I'm being generous. Probably a lot more. Imagine how many things we thought about we shouldn't have thought about. When a person's praying, where were we praying? What were we thinking? Right? In general. But I'm not even going to go there. All these things. Now, you want to tell me? You want to tell me with a straight face, I'm good. I didn't do many things wrong. You want to tell me you're going to understand the measure for measure? So I said 20 to 30 things. So I'll be, okay, 25. Let's say in between 25. Person did 25 things wrong. Some may be more egregious, less egregious. Some may be minute, whatever it is. Now multiply that by 7. 7 days a week, right? What is that? 175. That's 175 things they've done wrong. Don't you think there's going to be payback at some point for any number of these things? Whether it's the same day, a week later, a month later, there are things we're going to get paid back for we forgot about. God doesn't forget. So how can anyone say, one of the worst things the person can say is, when they prayed, God should answer everything I said and everything I prayed and all my things I want because I prayed very good today. I had proper intention. What is the evil inclination, Mr. S, going to say? Okay, let's open up his file. Let's see. Can anyone be that conceited? Now again, I'm not saying we don't want to understand why we go through certain things. And there are many things we'll never understand. Never. But we have to see sometimes we do certain things. Some things happen, opens up other doors. Totally opens up other doors. Right? We don't know where the doors are going to open. We don't know how it's going to manifest itself. Right? But I think at a certain level, people have a chip on their shoulder, and it's a bad thing to say, but I'm going to say it anyway, in that they're a little bit conceited to think they know how God runs the world. And I want to make sure, and I want to knock people down a little bit in order that they understand they're not God. Not even with the funny George Burns glasses and the mustache, which I mentioned in one of my meals over Shabbos. Not even with the funny glasses. We don't know. We don't have any idea what's going on. Imagine if God opened our eyes for a split second, and he really opened our eyes and we saw all these microbes trying to enter our body. You'd be totally grossed out. Worse than any sci-fi movie. Right? If God opened our eyes to drop, we wouldn't even get out of bed. So, my point is that I'm not saying it's not, we don't want to know why. Everything's the matrix. We want to know how it's all connected. The Torah's all connected. Very good. I want to see why to go through this and go through that. And sometimes you transgress Coffman's 615th commandment. Don't be a moron. Right? Other times, you're not going to know. Sometimes you did it by yourself. Sometimes God didn't stop you. Sometimes it has to do with what your soul has to go through. But if we've done 175 things wrong a week, at least, how can a person still ask the question? It's not a fair question. And I think it's chutzpahdik to ask. Because you're saying, I know God better. I know better. No, I understand. Curiosity killed the cat. I understand. A person wants to know. So part of my answer also is, and what if God would tell you? What if you had a prophet come to you in a dream? Or God came to you in a dream and said, you know why you had to go through this? Because you did this. And you did that, and you did the other thing. So I'm punishing you for this. Now let me ask you, if you did something egregious, you weren't paying attention, whatever the case is, and now you're paying the price. And now you're paying the serious price for however long. I think a person would feel worse. One part of me would say a person would feel worse. I can't believe I did that. I can't believe now this thing happened, that thing happened, whatever. On the other hand, there's nothing worse than being in doubt. When a person has 2 paths which way to go, or 3 paths, or whatever, and they're not sure what to do, right? Really, that's worse than anything else. Being in doubt is worse. So you say, okay, there's a certain level of knowledge, right? There's a certain level of tranquility a person can have when they say, when they find out why this happened, or why that happened. Now again, I would say maybe that tranquility, is not really what it looks like. Because I think in a certain way that would depress a person. I know of a story. I'll give you an example. I know of a story. Somebody I know that their daughter had a miscarriage, and the soul of that child that was supposed to be born, came to the daughter in a dream and said, "Don't worry, it had nothing to do with you. You had to be the conduit, to conceive and whatever, and you have nothing to worry about." Blah blah blah. That was the dream. So you can say it's wishful thinking. Dreams don't mean that much. This is a pretty significant dream. Now, that I would say is a little bit of a consolation. Maybe I would say it's half consolation, depending where the person's holding in emunah, in belief in God. Because the person just went through a traumatic thing, right? A woman has a miscarriage. Traumatic thing. No question about it.
Mm-hmm.
So the child comes back and says, or the soul of the child comes back and says, "It's not your fault. You have nothing to worry about." So it is comforting. We're not going to say it's not comforting. But I'm not going to say it's 100% comforting. Because they want to have the child. They're missing over here. They're missing having that child. But the child said, "It's not a problem. I'm in a much better place. I got fixed up. Everything is good. You have nothing to worry about." But the person's still lacking. Right? It's just like a righteous person dies, and everyone else is left grieving. But if it's a righteous person, you have nothing to worry about. They're getting tremendous reward in the next world. Tremendous reward, but it's who they leave behind. We're not talking about someone who's not going to be missed. Right? But someone who's seriously going to be missed, okay, different issue. They're in a much better place. They're sitting under God's heavenly throne, whatever that means. They're basking in God's glory. They're not lacking anything. The problem is, people down here, we're lacking. We're lacking that person. We're missing that person. But even if you would get a view, if God would say, "Okay, I'm going to humor you. I'm going to show you what this person's doing now." Right? And where their soul is. So that'll give us comfort. That for sure will give us comfort. But the person's still not in this world. It's not the same thing. It's totally not the same thing. It's comfort, though. But we have a desire to want to know. We want to know everything. We want to know.
We want our cake and eat it too.
Right? We want to know why we had to do this, why we had to go through this, why it's not worth living if I don't know. You're right. Being in doubt is worse. I definitely understand. But even so, why should we think that God owes us? Why does God owe us an explanation? At the end, God will show us why we had to go through certain things and all that. God will make it clear why in this world should he do it. Why does he have an obligation to do it? Because you say, "I just want to know." But remember, if a person has doors closed, other doors open. We may not see at the beginning, but it definitely happens. Sometimes it's better, sometimes it's worse. But no one is ever thrown to the wolves to the extent where there's no hope. Right? The Gemara says, when a person has a sword at their neck, God can always intervene. Can always be divine mercy. Now, doesn't mean the person's not going to die. Maybe the person will die. Right? But in the end, there's always hope. Right? There is always hope till there's no hope left. But, I think it's just the ultimate in chutzpah in many ways, that people think I should know. And that God should come and tell me, and it should be revealed. Why should it be revealed?
Well, we should labor to know, shouldn't we?
And if you knew, what's it going to help? That's my question. People think they deserve an explanation, right? But if they realize how the world works, and the million times we spit in God's face on a general basis,
yeah.
How can a person say, "I didn't deserve this"? They're not saying they don't deserve it. They say, "I want to understand why." But I'm pointing out there could be a million reasons why. There could be 1,500,000 reasons why. Well, what's the difference? Just because you don't necessarily understand Doesn't mean it's not measure for measure.
But
again,
isn't that the whole point of Torah? You study to know his path, right? His direction.
Yeah, but again, what do we consider God over here? Is God a physical entity? No. I remember being younger, they draw a picture of God. What do most people draw a picture of God? An old man with a crown sitting on the throne with a white beard. Right? God is not physical. We make him physical to a certain extent. The Torah anthropomorphizes. God's got an outstretched arm, right? A mighty hand. What? God's got like this, sucker punch hand. It's like big as the universe. Go boom. He's got a. What does that mean? We talk God in spiritual terms, right? In holiness. What is holiness? We're lacking many, many definitions over here. So we can only say what God isn't. But at the end of the day, we have to do what God says. If we don't do what God says, there's payback. Now, we don't always understand the payback. That's the whole point. We don't always understand the payback. You know what? And it doesn't matter. Right? It really doesn't matter. I've heard a number of times somebody died and say, wow, like what happened? I go, what do you care? He died. Sometimes more tragic, less tragic. When it's more tragic, it's hard to understand. Right? I know somebody for a number of years, whatever, they had issues with their legs, something, they put them on steroids and then they were bedridden and then something happened, they died. Like totally above nature. Right? Something that never should have happened. They've been sick for a while, nothing really major. And then all of a sudden took a total nosedive based on something the doctors thought, would help, and then they got an infection and that was it. So you're going to say, but that's tragic. You're right. When someone dies younger, this person, maybe in their mid-50s, that's tragic. They died before their time. There's no such thing. If God wants to take a person, he can take him a natural means, take him an unnatural means. But what does that mean? What does that mean in general? It means that was the time for the person to go. That means, as we said before, we're not in control. Totally not in control. There's a story of a great rabbi, slipped on ice, had knee surgery, was in the hospital, and like a week later died from other things. Had nothing to do with his knee. So we say here in Israel, surgery was successful, but the patient died. Right? He didn't die on the table from knee surgery. It was something else. But nothing related. Nothing related. So what does that mean? It means God took him. That's how God wanted to take him. You say, but it's unnatural. This okay? We're not in control. And then someone will say, what? You got 3-year-old dies of leukemia. Others say other tragedy. You're right. We don't understand these things. We can only understand these things in terms of a soul and how the soul works. Right? And there's reward and punishment, there's reincarnation, all these things. That's the only way. The only question is how we react. Does it break us? Does it make us into who we are? How do we deal with it? But we want this is a generation of instantaneous. Everything's instantaneous. A war, I can watch it. I can see things in real time. I don't have to wait for the news at 11. Right? I don't have to wait for the news at 6. I get it in real time. Everything's in real time. Everything's fast food. Move. Right? Doesn't work like that. There's so many things going on that, it's a process. We're just not privy to the process. Anyone listening now, hopefully, mostly non-Jews, right, that are listening now, they all have a story how they got here. They all have a story. Forget listening to me. They have a story of why they're Noahites, or why they're going to convert, or whatever the case is. They all have a story. Some are similar, some are not. But there is a constant theme. The constant theme is it's a work in progress. It's a constant theme. This happened. Something else happened. It didn't happen overnight. It wasn't instantaneous. People didn't just change for the sake of changing. It's a process, right? For Noah, it's a lot harder because, most people come out of Christianity or paganism and, if you're not going to believe in JC, you'll fry in hell forever. Okay, it's a little bit hard, to want to leave that because, how do I know it's not true? But at the same time, we have to see we're all work in progress. But at the same, we have to realize, even if that is true, It's not instantaneous. It's not just teach the entire Torah in 1 foot. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of learning by the right people, right? And not getting caught up in other things, not learning by the wrong people, which some people, took them on a nosedive, took them in a direction they didn't want to go, but they didn't know. So a lot of things, there are a lot of things, like that. And I don't know, maybe I'm just different because I never had these questions. Even when I had money, my question wasn't, why did God take it away? Could take it away for a million reasons, right? But that was never my question. What about all the people I helped? I get the merit for that. I don't lose out from that, right? But at the end of the day, you don't spit.
We don't like change much, though, do we?
You don't spit in the hand that fed you.
No.
The question is, how does it affect a person? So a person can be affected, be bitter their whole lives. I know somebody, whatever, took money, put it in a business, opened up another franchise, went under. Still bitter. Still bitter till this day. Okay. Question is how you deal with it. And if you're going to be bitter your whole life, certainly not good. No question. Now, I could have asked a lot of questions. And the question is that, giving charity saves a person. There are a lot of blessings for someone who gives charity. So what happened over here? Obviously, that got superseded. Right? In other words, if God would have come to me 20 years ago and say, okay, I'm taking away everything, otherwise I could have killed you for different things, and you're going to have an odyssey for so many years, you can deal with it. Because there's a plan. There's an ultimate plan. But if you're not privy to the ultimate plan, you're thrown to the wolves, and then this goes wrong, that goes wrong, a million things go wrong. So then you don't know what to do. Then it's, I would say it's overkill, right? Because then, before that, everything you touched gold. Everything was gold. Now everything you touch is black. No pun intended, right? It's all negative, totally negative. Now, that was for a certain amount of time. It was up, it was down, it was up, it was down. Like a yo-yo. But people could ask the question, so you did all this good. So what happened to all the good? The good is there. The merit for the good is there. Hopefully. The reward is still going to be there. But you don't spit at the hand that fed you. You're going to say it was a nasty way it happened. You're right. And let me tell you the nastiest way. The nastiest way is, if a person doesn't have any potential, they can't teach, they can't do this, okay. They gave it a chance, it doesn't work. But if you're in the process of building something, and you're working hard, and you're the talk of the town, and things are going unbelievably, and then the rug gets taken off from under you. To me, that was the hardest thing. Because if I didn't have any potential, good. Okay, I gave it a shot, didn't go. So I'll do other things.
Oh, Rabbi,
but if it was,
I'm at that stage in life where it's like I almost don't want to try another thing because it's going to flop.
So, in this case, if there's no potential, and there's no doing good things, and you are a flop, I know someone I went to yeshiva with wanted to go out and do kiruv and do Jewish outreach. He wasn't successful. Didn't have the personality, whatever the case was. Right? Okay, you give it a certain amount of time to see. Right? That's why, when it comes to the Levites serving in the Mishkan, in the temple, it says in two places, they start at 25 or 30. The question is, what is it, 25 or 30? So Rashi says you got 5 years to prove yourself in Torah. Give yourself 5 years. If you don't see the fruits of your, of your actions, then, you don't see the goodness of it, never going to happen. In other words, you sit and learn, you give it out everything you got. If you don't see positive development, it's not going to happen. Mm-hmm. You don't have that potential. Not everyone has the potential. Right? But you got to give it a certain amount of time. So for me, I would say, why these other people be able to do it? But this is my talent. This is what I'm good at. This is all I've ever wanted to do. And I didn't even use my money for business or anything else. I used it to help others, to support people. Versteht nicht, as we say in Yiddish, made no sense, in a certain way. but God's the one who runs the world. He's the one in charge. So I never had that complaint. I just felt like, why can't I use my talents? And the answer was, maybe God doesn't want you to use your talents, wants you to do other things. They got involved in real estate, some other things, whatever it was. But I was miserable to a certain extent because that's not where I should be. That's what I thought. And God had other plans, right? And the mantra was, well, maybe it's what God wants you to do now. But
maybe, yeah.
But
you wanted an answer.
I don't know if I wanted an answer. It wasn't really an answer. It was really like, why can't I do this?
Clarity. Yeah.
The answer was because God doesn't want you to do it now. And with all that talent, you use it for other things for now. That's really the answer, right? But it sort of burned inside of me because someone who's got potential, whatever that potential is, and now that potential is cut short because now you have to put money on the table, and you can't do what you want to do now. So that part of me destroyed. Not just it was hard.
It's gut-wrenching.
Not just it was hard. It was like this. It was heart-wrenching. It was heart-wrenching because that's just something I couldn't understand. And that's something I just couldn't understand. All that talent wasted. I have to sit there and speak to non-Jews and secular Jews about real estate. Okay, I was learning a good part of the day. I was doing that, whatever, until the market crashed in 2008. Fine. I did what I had to do. Not when something I necessarily wanted to do, right? And I had, at certain other time I had to do something also, and it killed my schedule in different ways. But okay, this is what I had to do. But the Chovos HaLevavos says in Du's Heart and the Shar B'tachon, and hopefully this will give you strength also, and that is you stick to what you're good at. In other words, God says, or the Chovos HaLevavos points out, that God's either going to give you bronze or brains. If he didn't give you brains, he's going to give you, physicality. He's going to give you strength in order to make money. Be a forklift driver. You do physical labor. God gives you brains.
Blue collar.
You're blue collar, right. If he gives you brains, you'll be white collar, right? Something like that. So everyone's going to have that opportunity. But he says, what happens? You're doing things, and it's not going. So the Chovos HaLevavos says you stick to what you're good at. You don't go outside what you're good at because if you do that, you'll be miserable. Now, if a person's in a field where that field just doesn't make any money, now it's making less money, that's a different issue, right? Then you might have to go into another field or something because it's not going to be enough. It's not going to help you over here. But essentially, if you go outside your comfort zone, you go out, meaning you go outside what you're good at, then you'll be miserable, right? But you always work towards that goal. But you're going to say, but if I'm good at this, but it doesn't make money, what do I do? So then you're going to find something that makes money. Someone wants to be a writer. Writers don't make money. You want to go into copywriting? Yeah. You want to go into, digital media, Facebook ads, other things, got to learn what to do, fine. All that doesn't make you money at the beginning, right? It takes time to build up and all this, right? But you use your talents, what you're good at. But you might have to do things you don't like to do in order to be able to do that. Someone who's an artist. How many artists make it big? Probably not too many. Right?
It's
Probably
like
not too many.
Yeah.
So you got to do what you got to do. You're going to say, but, try and keep it to things that you enjoy. Things that use your talents. Right? So to me, that was the biggest question. Now, I use my talents. When I was a middleman between, buyers and sellers. I'm a talker. Most people know. I got a big mouth also. Right? But, I used that talent. I just thought it was wasted talent. Why do I have to waste my talent doing this when I should be doing other things? That was my question. That was my question. But it wasn't like, God give me the answer and I'm not going to do anything until I get that answer. Or it's not fair and this and that. I might have thought that to a certain extent. But at the end of the day, what was the answer? The answer was, this is not what God wants now. Yeah, but I want to live my dream. Doesn't matter. It's not making money. You need to put money on the table now. Right? Probably something you can relate to. So a person may have to go out of their comfort zone, and go out of what they're good at, even though the Avos says you should not do that. But at the end of the day, if it's put up or shut up, then you got to do what you got to do. Then you may not have a choice, right? But, and it's hard, because I can tell you I've been through it. It's hard not to be bitter. It's hard not to be angry.
Thanks for being honest.
It's very hard because I saw other people being supported, being helped, and I had nothing. Not only that, I got it from all sides. When I had money, I got it. I should have used it for other things. I didn't have money. I should be doing this. I got it from both sides. Both sides of the mouth, which was even worse. Because I could have had people that helped me. They didn't want to. They weren't interested. Okay. Right? That's their choice. But it's not like they didn't have. And that was also something, I'm going here, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And I was like on my knees. And what would they say? It's your fault. So go out and get a job. Do something. You don't like it, whatever. So I got hammered on all sides. That was also hard. It was also very hard. So I realized, you know what? At the end of the day, whatever I do, when it comes to family, I'm never going to get a pat in the back for nothing. Right? I'm not going to get compliment, nothing. So expect nothing. But we like to get, we have to have support. So I always say, if I'm feeling at the top of my game and everything's going good, I know who to speak to. I know who to speak to. They're going to knock me down.
Yeah.
So I'm saying there were very dark times.
Bring you down to earth.
You're right. There were very dark times where I'm not going to say I didn't want to get out of bed. I just, I was getting tossed around. I was getting tossed around and hammered. Totally hammered. Sometimes it was better. Sometimes it was worse. Whatever it was. And, there wasn't stability. There was absolutely not stability. Big family, not so easy. So whatever. But, when you get no support and you get hammered, Monday morning quarterback. Oh, you should have done this. Oh, you should have done that. Yeah. And if my grandmother had wheels, I'd be a bus. Or she'd be a bus, right? So don't give me, I should have done this, should have done that. And what would have happened? And maybe the business would have gone under. Right? And then my wife was working for an online institution, as a sort of like as a professor, getting a good salary. And I was getting paid by the hour as like a teaching assistant. And then, for like about a year and a half, almost 2 years, business is booming, things are good. And then the institution got shut down. They got shut down for taking money they shouldn't have taken. Whatever, the whole story. So that is when my wife learned how to do Facebook ads. And she got me on the map on Facebook and learned social media, and all these things because, she's good at writing, and she wanted to learn how to do these things to promote what I do. So if I make more, so it's easier, whatever. And that's how it got started. That's how, whatever, she got started and, whatever. So, based on that, you don't know. This company was around for a number of years. All right, they were making a lot of money. They're making, they got too big too fast and, did some shady things or whatever, but they were around for a number of years. So how do you know you're going to work for a company that's been around for a long time and then it shut down? Or something happens. Or COVID happens, right? Who expected that? Layoffs, up the gazoo, this, that, all kinds of things, right? We're not in control of that. Not in control at all. A person worked for Sears out of business. All these companies going out of business, right? Worked there for years, all of a sudden, boom, gone. This one gone. Another one, is there a guarantee in anything? There's a guarantee in two things. Death and taxes. Not necessarily in that order. That's it. Right? So now you have to learn how to diversify. You need to learn, how to multitask, how to do a lot of other things. You always have to almost retrain every couple yeeurs, right? To make sure you're up to date with the standard and what's going on in the world. But is that a guarantee?
You don't want to become obsolete.
It's not it could be. Right? It's not it's not a contradiction. Because even before COVID, there were places letting off people and different things. Because things were down. The economy was down. So if that's the case and you're doing good work and now you get stability, so I had that also. Working for a company and then boom, right? 11 months later, they, started to, to cut down or whatever. I didn't dream what happened to me. Because I was there at the beginning, pretty much at the beginning. So I didn't think it would happen to me. Okay, I get this call. Shocking. It's 11 months. couldn't get unemployment because not there for a year or whatever, and my wife was like hysterical, like what's going to be? So, getting unemployment help. But she said, okay, you want to do this thing with, conversion or whatever, you do it like a full-time job, right? That was my wife's ultimatum. Otherwise, you're going to find something else to do. You do it like a full-time job. You get back to doing YouTube videos, you report 2 reports in the week. You start doing your Q&As again. You get out there, you make posts, you do it like a job. That's what I did. Now, what happens? I'll tell you the end of the story because it's a good ending. Within 2 weeks, now this other job I had, I wasn't getting paid great amounts of money, so to speak. It helped. I'm not going to say not.
There was something steady there.
But I was learning. I get home at, let's say, 2:30, 3 o'clock. And I work from like 4 to midnight. So I still gave my conversion classes, but whatever. It was, it was a rough time, sleep wise, other things, but. All of a sudden, I get this call, and so that was the ultimatum. So now there's a good ending to the story. Then the good ending is within 2 weeks, give or about 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, I gained enough students that paid for the job that I already had.
Wow.
Within that amount of time, and then it just sort of snowballed. Now sometimes I'll get less students a month, sometimes more. But this was like going crazy. I got like 10, 12 students in 1 month. That like never happens, ever. It never, in all years, never happened like that. So, then it evened out. In the end, it evened out. But God, and so my wife's like totally distraught. What's going to be? And God, and what does God say over here? Don't worry about it. I closed one door. I'm going to open you up other doors. Don't worry about it. I'm going to take care of it. Right. So I said, okay, I'm going to put my best
Rabbi, it sounds like you're trying to share with us Hashem's signature on the issue. And, that's really what a lot of us are looking for. We want to cleave to Hashem, but we want to recognize his signature on the matter or the drama.
You know what? It could have been months. I could have flopped, only got a few students a month like I normally was doing. Not everyone was paying anyway. So let's say, I gave myself a certain amount of time, right? But I couldn't get unemployment. Sorry, let's go back. I didn't get unemployment, right? I got a certain amount because I worked there a number of months, but I didn't get unemployment, right? It was sort of done that way. So I wouldn't get unemployment. So, okay, so I had to put my best foot forward. If it didn't go within a few months, would have given it a few months. And my wife is just, starting out as well, so to speak. So combined, hopefully, we'll be okay. So what happened? God said, what are you worried about? You're forgetting the X factor. I said, okay, you put me in this situation. I did something for 11 months I didn't want to do. I hated what I did. I absolutely hated what I did.
I hear you. I understand.
But I did what I had to do, right? I had no choice, right? Something came out of the blue. This job came totally out of the blue. And I took it, and I took it. It wasn't something I necessarily wanted to do. But okay. In the end, I didn't enjoy it. There were a lot of things I didn't enjoy about it. Fine. So, and then all of a sudden this came out of the blue. I wasn't expecting this. Not at all. So my wife's ultimatum was, okay, you make what you do now like a business. You put in the effort. You're going to get home in the afternoon. You're making videos. You're putting out emails. You're making blog posts. You're doing whatever it takes. Like this is your main priority. This is your job. Okay.
And we're thankful.
So now, is that any guarantee?
No.
That I'm going to be successful? There's no guarantee. But I'm doing what I love to do. Right? And I absolutely love what I do, no question. And okay, let's see what's going to be. So I pray 3 times a day, saying, okay, God, you're the one in charge. You're the one who did this. It's not, okay, maybe it's my fault. I should have done this, should have done that. Whatever, fine. Whatever it is, I'm in this situation. So 3 times a day I prayed. This is what you want? Okay. You're the one in charge. Yeah. You're the one, you want to break
Ultimately,
me. Ultimately,
we must come to that.
You're not going to break me.
Hashem's in control.
Right. I said, you're the one in charge. You're the one who can change this. So if you want to change it, I'm all ears. I'm going to put my best foot forward, and that's what I'm going to do. And all of a sudden, and things went ballistic. Unbelievably ballistic. Because, over the years, I've never seen such a jump like I had. Never. Sometimes I got 5 people a month. Sometimes it was 2 people a month. I mean, it offset. If I get 5 a month, maybe 2 months I wouldn't get anybody. Right? And then I get 3, or I get 1, or 1 would leave, or, no, there's no rhyme or reason here. It's whatever. Murphy Stein's law over here. Whatever it's going to be. This is what God wants. So my mantra was, you're the one in charge. I'm in this situation for whatever reason. And that's it. I'll do my best. I'll put my best foot forward. And I had for 2-3 months, my numbers went up exponentially. Can't be explained. Because if you go throughout the years, even I was doing a Q&A, and I was doing my Torah portion of the week, and I was doing Derech Hashem, I was doing all these things. The numbers weren't there. The numbers weren't there in general. Sometimes more, sometimes less. I mean, it was consistent. It was consistent to a certain extent. But this was just off the charts. Right? So, like, after a couple weeks, within a 2-week span, 2.5 week span, like 7, 8 students or something like that, and then it snowballed the next month, another 4 or 5 or whatever it was. That's unheard of. Totally unheard of. Right? So what does God tell you? God tells you, I'm putting you in this situation, but don't worry, I'm not going to close your doors. There are going to be other doors that are open. You're like, come on. What am I going to do now? I was looking at other things, potentially other things. And I said, I'm going to put my best foot forward and see what happens. That was the ultimatum. You do whatever it takes. So, okay. But I'm thinking in the back of my mind, I'm in trouble here. Because, if you go according to nature, the numbers have never been really, off the charts. Sometimes better, sometimes worse. Never been off the charts. This was off the charts. Within 2 months, 2.5 months. Made a lot more money than that. It was crazy. I mean, not that I'm complaining, thank God. But, at the end of the day, we mentioned before that we sit here and we worry, which we have an obligation to because, we have to put bread on the table. We have to work hard and all that. But at the end of the day, God sends us a proverbial bonus. Says, don't worry, I'm still here. It's like, I'm still here. You were worried about this, you're worried about that. I'm not saying a person doesn't have to put their best foot forward. We have 100%, we have to do that. And sometimes I just shrug my shoulders and say, what do you want from me? Well, what more can I do over here? I went 11 months, busy day in and day out. From 7 in the morning, 7:15 in the morning till, 12 o'clock, 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning. Getting up the next day, 5:30, whatever. It was, it took its toll. Probably, could have taken a couple years off my life. Who knows? But in the end, okay. You want to learn, you want to teach, whatever, fine. But you got to do something else. So fine. This came up and it filled a need. It definitely filled a void. That there was no question. And then after that, the rug gets pulled out from underneath you. And you're like, what, are you kidding? Okay, I'm not saying it was the greatest amount of money, but at the same time, I'm thinking what do you want now? I did what I didn't want to do. I did what I had to do. And it certainly helped in this and that. It helped in a lot of different ways. Fine. Now what? I did some kind of joke. What's going on? And then all of a sudden, these other things happen and boom. And things take off. So, did I expect that? Not my wildest dreams. What, I'm going to go back on YouTube and Facebook and, and do all these things, and the end result's going to be what it is? It never happened. That's what I'm telling you. It never happened. That's why it was shocking. And I tell my wife, up another one, up another one, up. I got 3 people I'm speaking to today. Up. It's not normal, right? Totally not normal. So, in my biggest ego, I could say, look at all the effort I put in. Look at how charismatic. Look at this. Had nothing to do with me. It had nothing to do with me because according to nature, even everything else I did before didn't add up. It didn't add up over here. So if it didn't add up, why would I expect it to add up now? You're going to say, well, desperate thoughts. Maybe. I wasn't thinking that. I said, okay, let's see. We'll give it a certain amount of time. We'll see where it goes. And if it doesn't go, and it only trickles in, okay, so, I'll see what else is out there. I'll put feelers out there and see. Which I was doing anyway. I was doing anyway at the same time, because I was putting my best foot forward to see. In my wildest dreams, I never would have thought such a thing. Never! This was above nature. Totally above nature. You can say, no, you changed this, you changed that, you got a great backdrop, all these things. Nothing! I put my best foot forward. Fine. Is that a guarantee for success? Not a guarantee for success. Totally not a guarantee for success. But that's what we have to do. You see, we can put our best foot forward, and God said, no. No, I'm going to squeeze you. But the point over here is, as we're ending, I want to give people strength over here because over the years, I just kept going up and down. It was up and down, up and down. I had a certain level of I had a certain level of stability, for a couple years, and my wife got involved in Facebook ads and different things, paid a lot of money for classes and different things, and, for her, whatever. It took a while, for her stuff to get off the ground. But okay, at some point, something had to give, so, okay, I had no choice. So I took this job, and I'm like, and then 11 months later, the rug is pulled out from underneath me. And I look up to heaven, I'm like, are you joking? I was like, it's some kind of joke? I'm not saying it was the greatest level of stability. It wasn't. It helped. It definitely helped. Well, like I said, I wasn't raking in the money by any stretch. Plus that, plus my classes on money my wife was making, okay. I got by. And it was easier in different ways. There's no question. But at the same time, I still had kids to marry and, whatever. But still, with all that, I would have expected a million years. The rug's going to be pulled out. But on top of that, then 3 weeks later, God's going to say, what are you worried about? I'm taking care of business. It can happen. It could happen later. Maybe I'll take another job. Whatever it is, we have to say the mantra. And the mantra is, God, you're the one in charge. You are 100% in charge. It has nothing to do with me. Nothing to do with me. Zero. I'm just putting my best foot forward. You do what you want. I'm telling you what I need. Whatever. And then things happen exponentially. Something I never would have expected. Whatever that merit was or whatever happened, God's okay, you suffered enough. I'm going to take care of you.
Yeah. Here's the mazal.
But I'm going to take care of you in one shot. You're right. We say, things can happen in the blink of an eyelash. Things can change tomorrow. No, nobody knows. But at the end of the day, if we think how certain things happen, we're going to say, where did this come from? How did that happen? How was I able to do this? And what's the answer? Because God did it. Because there is no rational way to explain it. Again, you can say, I was out there more. I was doing more things. People saw me. But again, if you look over the years, I've been doing this for 13 years. Classes with Noah Hides, later, but, conversion class, other things, and never, I'm not going to say it's ever been a booming business, not a business, right? I'm certainly helping a lot of people, right? But if you were to ask me, come on, in 2 months or 3 months, you're going to gain this exponential. I'm going to say you're out of your mind. That's okay. I'll do what I need to do, right? God's going to have to do the rest. So person can say, well, it's an advertising and it was this and it was that. I put my best foot forward, but that's not a guarantee for success, right? And at the same time, what did I say is that, after having a certain level of stability, now I'm back to instability. And there's nothing worse than being not stable. And nothing worse than that. And how you're going to live and how you're going to survive and,
right.
and all these different things. It didn't break my morale, but, I said, okay, whatever's going to be, it's going to be. And I told my wife, if it doesn't work after a certain amount of time, I'll look into other things and, whatever's going to be. But I'm going to put my best foot forward here. And it went. in a major way. Nothing that I would have expected. So I can't say it's
100%.
anything I did per se, right? Because all the years before that, it was never going off exponentially. Sometimes better, sometimes worse, whatever it is, right? But this is a whole different thing. Because now God says, okay, now you're ready. Now I want you to put in contact with this one, with that one, and do other things. And now, now is the time. Now I want you to focus on this. Okay? Right? He didn't tell me that. I was like thrown in the gutter.
Circumstances, laid out.
Right? I was thrown to the wolves again. And I'm like, it's like a sine curve. I was up at the top for a long time. Then I was at the bottom. Then I got up a little bit. Then I got knocked down again. I got up a little bit more. Then I had this other job. So fine. I didn't necessarily enjoy that either, working for this school. But, it worked out. My wife made a heck of a lot of money more than I did. Gave me the opportunity to learn. Gave me the opportunity for other things. And then they went out of business. So whatever. So then, we had to regroup. But it's been an up and down thing. That's
while raising the children, right?
And raising the children, trying to marry off kids. I mean, it's a whole thing, right? It's a whole thing, and it's things that I never would have expected, But things I didn't enjoy either, to a good extent. But you know what? It doesn't really matter, because when your back's against the wall, you do what you have to do, right? That's it. And if you don't like it, it's too bad. Until you can go back to doing what you do, right? But I'm just a firm believer, like I said, I guess we'll end with this, that, what really bugged me to no end is if you tell me I had no talent and I had no knowledge and, and I wasn't good at what I did, okay, I gave it my best shot. I'll go into other things. It would have knocked me down a lot of pegs, but okay, I could deal with that. But if that's not the case, then the question is, God, why are you doing this? This is what I'm good at. And what's the answer? Because that's not what you should have been doing now. Whatever reason, it was taken away. And for me, that was the hardest thing. That was definitely the hardest thing. And not everything we do makes money that we like. We might have to do things we don't like, but we have to deal with it. It has to try and use our talents. And not everything we do can use our talent. So that is part 4. We're definitely going to have part 5. Certainly on the more possessions, the more worry. We're going to do more of that and maybe get to the next part of the Mishna next week.
Awesome. Well, thank you,
and
Rabbi.
Next week will be normal time for me, same time for everybody else, because they're changing the clocks.
Right, yeah.
Changing the
Here
clocks
in the
tomorrow.
West, we got daylight savings tonight, so it'll all balance out.
Right.
I
so one other plug doing for No Hide Nations tomorrow. We're doing No Hide class at 2:30 Eastern time, 9:30 Israel time. We're going to go through terminology that are used, Noah hides, Ger Toshav, whatever. We're gonna go through that soup to nuts. So anyone interested, sign up on nohidenations.com. And the other 2 classes are there. They're up. Anyone can see them.
And you're back on with Tanakh Talk tomorrow.
Yeah, and hopefully Tanakh Talk tomorrow also at 12:30 Eastern time. 7:30 Israel time. Not exactly sure on the topic yet. We'll have to see, but it looks like gonna have back to a jam-packed full schedule tomorrow. So by the end of my last class at 11 o'clock my time, I'll probably be seeing things. So hopefully, hopefully we get through everything tomorrow.
Well, thank you so much, Rabbi. I know that you're ringing a chord with me about situations and circumstances in life where we just have to come to that point where we acknowledge that Hashem's in complete control, and and be willing to adjust our steps in our lives as needed to deal with the situations and circumstances that are thrown our way that are beyond our control, whether we like them or not. I mean, though I'm thankful that you talked about putting your best foot forward, and that's really all that we can do. Correct?
That's it. But, again, putting our best foot forward does not mean
there's no assurances, no guarantees.
There's no assurances, but that's our obligation.
Oh, Rabbi, right, I can say that, in some of my most trying times in life, there was so many people in this world demanding guarantees out of me when there is no guarantees in life. And it's almost like, yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like the squeezing that comes. All I can say is, I don't know, but Hashem knows. And I'm thankful for the lesson you shared today. So Hashem willing, we'll be back for the usual time next week with part 5 of chapter 2, Mishna 8. And Rabbi, we pray that you have strength and be encouraged in all that you do. Folks, you can always contact Rabbi Coffman on his website, or orthodoxconversion.com. And do check out, if you haven't yet, his class on the Noahide Nations website. I've had the honor of listening in on the classes myself. They're beautiful, well spoken, well thought out, and clear. So yeah. Till next week, folks, have a wonderful